Chosen ones, listen with every fiber of your being. This weekend is not ordinary. It is not casual. It is not another day to be crossed off your calendar. Heaven has written its own announcement across the skies. I will move, and I will do it openly. This is not a quiet blessing behind closed doors. This is a thundering move of God before the eyes of the nations. The Spirit of the Lord is sounding an alarm, saying, prepare, for I am about to show myself strong in the sight of all men. The wind of God's purpose is already stirring in the unseen realms. The angels have taken their positions. The heavenly court has issued its decree. There is a shift in the atmosphere so heavy you can almost taste it on your lips. This is not just a whisper in your spirit. This is the roar of the Lion of Judah breaking through the noise of the earth. The hour has come for the chosen to step into a divine moment where the impossible becomes inevitable. This weekend, God's hand will not be hidden. It will be stretched out in power. The kind of power that shakes nations, splits seas, and raises the dead. The kind of power that no human agenda can stop and no demonic scheme can delay. The earth will have no choice but to acknowledge, surely the Lord has done this. He's not coming quietly. He's coming as the God of glory, who makes the earth tremble and the heavens thunder. Some of you have prayed in secret for years, believing for God to intervene. You have wondered if your prayers were even heard, if your cries reached beyond the ceiling of your room. But the Lord says, I have heard every word, and I am about to answer in a way that will silence every doubt. The answer will not sneak into your life unnoticed. It will arrive like a flood that sweeps away every obstacle in its path. This is a divine appointment, a set time, a heaven-ordained collision of the supernatural with the natural. When the Almighty decides to move openly, no force in heaven, earth, or hell can stand in his way. He is the God who turns mourning into dancing and ashes into beauty. In a moment so sudden, it takes your breath away. And this weekend, he is not doing it in a corner. He is putting his glory on display for all to witness. You will see him overturn verdicts that man declared final. You will see him reverse losses that the enemy thought were permanent. You will see him open doors so wide that no man can shut them. The God who called light out of darkness is about to call victory out of what looked like defeat. And he will do it in such a way that every eye will see his handiwork. Even now, the Spirit of God is positioning people, aligning circumstances, and arranging divine meetings. Some of you are about to walk into moments that have been orchestrated for months, even years, without your knowledge. And when they happen, you will know that it was not luck, not coincidence, but the sovereign move of the living God. This is the hour where the hidden work of heaven burst forth in open demonstration. The same God who led Israel by a pillar of fire is still the God of public displays. He does not hide his deliverance when it is time to glorify his name. He will part your Red Sea in front of your enemies. He will rain down his fire in the sight of those who mocked you. He will restore what was stolen in a way that makes the thief regret ever touching you. And this weekend, his hand will be seen in ways you cannot yet imagine. Do not think for a moment that you will walk out of this weekend the same way you entered it. The heavens are loaded. The command has been given, and the trumpet is about to sound in your spirit. This is the moment to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, for he is about to reveal himself not only to you, but through you. Get ready, chosen ones, for the King is stepping into the open, and his glory will be unmistakable. When God moves, he does not always hide his hand in the shadows. There are moments when the King of Glory steps onto the stage of history and lets the whole world watch him work. This is the God who rolled back the Red Sea, not in secret, but with the sun shining and the whole nation watching. He split the water so wide that every man, woman, and child could walk through on dry ground with their heads held high, while Pharaoh's army stood helpless on the shore. The display of his power is never accidental. It is purposeful. He does it to magnify his name, to strengthen the faith of his people, and to send terror into the camp of the enemy. Elijah did not call down fire on Mount Carmel in a quiet prayer meeting. He stood before a nation that had turned to idols and cried out for the God who answers by fire. And when the flames fell from heaven, there was no debate, no dispute. The people fell on their faces and declared, "The Lord, he is God." God's power is not a theory, not a doctrine to be debated, but a reality to be witnessed. The Bible is a gallery of public miracles, where heaven's power broke into earth's stage. Blind eyes opened on busy streets. The lame walked in front of crowds. The dead were raised in the middle of funerals. These moments left no room for argument. Even those who hated Jesus could not deny that something supernatural had taken place. When God moves in public, it is like lightning flashing across the sky. You cannot stop it, you cannot hide it, and you cannot pretend it didn't happen. It breaks through human control, bypasses natural laws, and makes skeptics fall silent. This is the kind of move we are about to see again. The Lord will do something so visible, so undeniable, that no news outlet, no rumor mill, and no whispering critic will be able to erase it from the memory of those who see it. Some blessings God gives in the secret place for your personal strengthening, but there are others meant to be a banner of his glory. When he healed the man at the beautiful gate, it wasn't just for that man's legs. It was for every worshiper in the temple to witness the glory of God. They knew him as the one who had begged for years, and suddenly they saw him walking, leaping, and praising God. The miracle was a public announcement. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is still alive. And make no mistake, when the Lord puts his power on display, it is not to entertain the curious, but to confront the unbelieving. Pharaoh's magicians could mimic a few signs, but when God turned denial into blood and sent plagues no man could reverse, Egypt knew they were not dealing with tricks. They were facing the living God. This weekend, the Spirit is saying there will be manifestations that cannot be counterfeited, imitated, or explained away. The public display of God's power is also a signpost for His people. It tells you you are not forgotten, you are not abandoned, you are not alone. When He parts your sea or sends fire from heaven, it is His way of saying to the world, this one belongs to me. It is a visible seal of His covenant, a demonstration that His promises are not empty words, but living realities. We are living in a time when God is once again choosing to display His power in ways that cannot be confined to church walls. This is not about a few people in a prayer meeting. This is about the nations seeing the hand of God stretched out. There will be testimonies that travel far beyond the place where they happened. What He does in one location will be spoken about across cities, across borders, across continents. The God of public miracles has not changed. He still steps into hopeless situations and turns them into living billboards of His power. And when He moves in this way, the purpose is always the same, to lift up His name so high that even those far from Him cannot escape His light. This is the kind of move that marks generations and leaves footprints in the sands of history for all to see. God is not random in His movements. He is a God of precision, a God of appointed times, a God who works according to divine seasons that no man can alter. Just as there was a set time for Israel to leave Egypt, there is a set time for you to step into your breakthrough. This weekend carries the mark of heaven's timing, and the Spirit of God is saying, the hour you have prayed for is not coming. It has come. In the fullness of time, God sent His Son into the world. Not a moment too early, not a second too late, but exactly when the prophetic clock struck the appointed hour. The same God who orchestrated the birth of Christ is orchestrating this very moment in your life. Every delay you have faced, every detour you have endured, was leading to this intersection of destiny where the supernatural collides with the now. This is not coincidence. This is divine appointment. Throughout the Bible, we see God's hand moving suddenly when the time was ripe. At the set time, Sarah conceived, though her body was as good as dead. At the appointed season, Joseph was pulled from the prison and placed in the palace. The Lord is never in a hurry, but He's never late. And when the appointed moment arrives, nothing and no one can stand in the way. This weekend is carrying that same prophetic weight. There are days when heaven is simply watching, preparing, and positioning, but then there are days when the King steps down and declares, now. This weekend carries the atmosphere of a divine now. The prayers that have been seeds in the ground are about to break the surface. The tears that have been sown in secret are about to be turned into public joy. The Spirit is announcing that the waiting season is over and the manifestation season is here. You may have felt like your life was in a holding pattern, circling the same wilderness with no sign of movement. But just as the Israelites camped at the Jordan until the Lord said, go, You have been stationed at the edge of your promise, waiting for the word. That word is being released now, and it carries the force to push you into the current of God's plan. The river's parting, not because of human effort, but because the timing of heaven demands it. Prophetic timing is never about convenience. It is about divine orchestration. God knows exactly when your miracle will carry the most weight, when your deliverance will speak the loudest, when your testimony will have the greatest impact. Some of you have wondered why the breakthrough didn't come last year or even last month. But what you could not see was that God was aligning people, resources, and opportunities so that when the moment came, it would be unstoppable. Think of Pentecost. The disciples were in the upper room waiting. They didn't know the exact minute, but they knew the promise was coming. And then suddenly the sound of a rushing mighty wind filled the place and fire fell. This was not a random event. It was the exact day, the exact hour that God had chosen before the foundation of the world. This weekend carries that same divine suddenly. When God marks a moment, all of creation comes into agreement with it. The Spirit moves, angels are dispatched, doors swing open, and the enemy's grip is broken. This is why some of you will find things happening in the next hours that you didn't plan. Meetings you didn't arrange, calls you didn't expect, because heaven is moving the pieces into place according to the timetable of the Almighty. This is the prophetic timing of this weekend. The enemy thrives in accusation. He whispers lies in the dark. He stirs up doubt in your mind, and he uses people to question your calling, your anointing, and your worth. But there's one thing the devil cannot do. He cannot argue with a miracle that happens in plain sight. When God moves openly, it shuts the mouth of every accuser and leaves no room for debate. This is why public miracles are one of heaven's most powerful weapons. In the book of Acts, when Peter and John healed the man at the beautiful gate, the religious leaders were furious. But the Bible says they could not deny the miracle because the man was standing there, whole and healed, for everyone to see. The accusers were silenced, not by clever arguments, but by undeniable evidence. God's power spoke louder than their threats, and the testimony stood as a wall against their schemes. When God opened the prison doors for Peter, it wasn't done in secret. The guards were there, the city was watching, and the news spread quickly. The enemy had orchestrated a public humiliation, but God turned it into a public vindication. This is his way. He takes what the enemy meant for shame and turns it into a spectacle of his glory so great that even the opposition cannot speak against it. Think of Paul on the island of Malta. A viper fastened itself to his hand, and the people watched, expecting him to swell up and die. But when nothing happened, and Paul shook the snake into the fire, the very same people who expected his downfall declared he must be a man of God. The enemy's plan to destroy became the stage for God's validation. Public miracles dismantle the plans of darkness in an instant. Even in the Old Testament, God used visible signs to silence entire nations. When Jericho's walls fell, they didn't collapse quietly. They crumbled before the eyes of both Israel and their enemies. It was not just a military victory, it was a divine statement. No fortress, no barrier, no power of man could stand against the God of Israel. The enemy's confidence shattered in the dust of those fallen walls. The public nature of these miracles is strategic. God could answer you in private, but sometimes he chooses to do it in a way that your enemies must witness. It is his way of saying, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. This is not about pride. It is about the justice of God being revealed for all to see. It's about the vindication that comes when heaven makes your victory undeniable. Look at the resurrection of Lazarus. Jesus could have healed him in secret before he died, but he waited until the tomb had been sealed for 4 days. He allowed the mourners, the doubters, and even his critics to gather. Then, in front of them all, he called Lazarus out of the grave. That one public miracle was so powerful that it triggered an unstoppable wave of belief among the people, and the enemy had nothing left to say. When God silences the enemy, he does it in a way that not only shuts the mouth of your accuser, but also strengthens the faith of those around you. Your miracle becomes a sermon without words, a visible declaration that God is still on the throne. And in that moment, all the plotting, all the whispering, and all the resistance collapses under the weight of his undeniable power. This is the force of a public miracle. It speaks for itself, and it speaks louder than the enemy ever could. When God is ready to move, the question is not whether his power will come. The question is whether you will be in the place to receive it. The supernatural explosion is not random. It falls on those who are positioned in faith, worship, and obedience. You cannot live in doubt and expect to see the fullness of his glory. Faith is the currency of heaven, and without it you cannot draw from the treasury of God's power. Faith is not wishful thinking, it is a conviction so deep that you act on it before you see the result. Noah built the ark before a drop of rain had ever fallen. Abraham started walking before he knew the destination. The woman with the issue of blood pushed through the crowd before she felt the healing in her body. This is the kind of faith that positions you for an explosion of God's power. The faith that moves before the miracle. Worship is another key that opens the atmosphere for the supernatural. Worship is not just a song you sing. It is a declaration of God's greatness in the face of every contrary situation. Paul and Silas worshipped in the midnight hour of their prison cell, and their praises shook the very foundations of the place. The chains fell off, the door swung open, and the power of God broke in. When you worship, before the breakthrough, you build a landing strip for the glory of God. Obedience is where the power of faith and worship becomes action. God's instructions often carry the key to your miracle, but they may not make sense to the natural mind. Naaman was told to dip 7 times in the Jordan River. The widow was told to borrow empty vessels. Peter was told to cast his net again after a fruitless night. Every act of obedience aligns you with the exact place where God's power is set to fall. Positioning yourself also means staying alert in the Spirit. The supernatural often comes suddenly, and those who are spiritually asleep can miss it. The disciples in Gethsemane were told to watch and pray, yet they slept while heaven's greatest plan unfolded before them. The Spirit is calling the chosen to be vigilant, to keep their lamps filled with oil, to be sensitive to His voice, and to be ready to move the moment He says move. Many miss the supernatural because they are waiting for comfort instead of alignment. The upper room was not comfortable. It was a place of waiting, prayer, and unity. But it was in that upper room that the fire of Pentecost fell. Positioning yourself for the explosion may require you to leave familiar places, to step away from voices of doubt, and to stay in the place God has called you until His power comes. This positioning is also about purity of heart. The power of God does not fall on vessels that are divided in their loyalty. The Lord searches for those whose hearts are fully His, who are not chasing the glory for themselves, but are ready to release it to point others to Him. Purity attracts His presence because it tells heaven, this vessel is trustworthy with the fire. If you want to be in the path of the supernatural explosion, you must posture yourself like the servants at the wedding in Cana. They simply obeyed Jesus' words to fill the jars with water, not knowing they were standing on the edge of a miracle. And in their obedience, they saw water turn to wine before their very eyes. The chosen ones of this hour must live in that same posture, ready, listening, believing, and willing to move without hesitation when the command comes. When the hand of God rests on a person, it is impossible to hide it. His presence marks you, His power surrounds you, and His favor goes before you like a blazing fire. People may not understand the depth of your journey, but they will see the evidence of God's touch on your life. The same ones who doubted you will witness the undeniable proof that the Almighty is with you. When David stepped onto the battlefield against Goliath, he did not carry a sword or armor, but the hand of God was upon him. And when the giant fell, the entire nation of Israel knew that this victory was not human, it was divine. The enemy's threats were silenced, the people's faith was ignited, and David's life was forever marked by that public demonstration of God's power. This is what happens when the hand of God is revealed through you. The world takes notice when God lifts you from the pit and sets you on high. Joseph was thrown into prison, forgotten by men, but in one day the hand of God brought him before Pharaoh. He walked out wearing the robes of royalty, and the same land that had seen his chains now saw his crown. It is the kind of transformation that cannot be explained by talent or luck. Only by the power of the living God. And the hand of God is visible, even those far from Him are forced to acknowledge it. Nebuchadnezzar threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fiery furnace. But when he saw them walking unharmed in the flames with the Son of God, he declared His greatness. The king who once mocked their faith now became a witness to the reality of their God. Public encounters with his power turned skeptics into testifiers. The hand of God on your life is more than a blessing. It is a signpost pointing to him. Your victories will not be for your applause, but for his glory. Your breakthrough will speak to people who may never open a Bible, but will see the living word written in your story. When he moves in you, your life becomes a walking testimony that his power is real and his promises are true. There is a fragrance that comes with God's hand upon you. It is the aroma of heaven that cannot be manufactured or imitated. People sense it in the way doors open for you, in the way battles turn in your favor, in the way peace surrounds you in the storm. This is not because of who you are, but because of whose hand is guiding you. His touch makes the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. Even your enemies will have to admit they cannot fight against it. When the Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant, the hand of the Lord was heavy against them until they returned it. They learned quickly that it is dangerous to stand against the one whom God defends. In the same way, those who have plotted your downfall will find themselves unable to stop what God is doing in your life. When the world sees the hand of God on you, it will provoke questions. Some will ask how it happened. Others will want to know the source of your strength. And in that moment, you will have the opportunity to point them to Jesus. Your life will become a pulpit without walls, preaching the goodness and the power of the Lord to every watching eye. This is the ripple effect of a public demonstration of his glory. Chosen ones. The moment we have spoken of is no longer a distant prophecy. It is standing at your door. This is not an ordinary weekend. This is the weekend when the God who sits enthroned above the heavens will step into the affairs of men in open display. The invisible will become visible. The quiet prayers of years will erupt into visible answers that cannot be hidden. The world will see, the enemy will tremble, and heaven's decree will stand without challenge. This is the hour when the Lion of Judah is not pacing in the shadows. He is roaring in the streets. This is the moment when the wind of the Spirit is not simply stirring, it is breaking forth like a mighty rushing torrent. I can hear the sound of chains snapping in the unseen. I can feel the shaking of prison doors that cannot stay shut. This is the hour of divine invasion, where the supernatural interrupts the natural, and no man can stop it. God is about to place his signature on your life in such a way that even those who doubted you will have to confess, the Lord has done this. Your story will shift so suddenly, so dramatically, that people will not be able to explain it. What was bound will be loosed. What was hidden will be revealed. What was lost will be restored, in full view of those who thought it was gone forever. This is the weekend of undeniable power. There will be moments in these days ahead that will mark you for the rest of your life. The sudden phone call that changes everything. The unexpected door that swings wide, the breakthrough that arrives without warning but right on time. These are not coincidences. These are divine signatures, proof that heaven has stepped into your story. And it will happen in such a way that no one who witnesses it will be able to erase it from their memory. I see the Lord lifting his people into places that were once forbidden to stand. I see verdicts being overturned, debts being erased, and diagnoses being reversed. I see the same God who silenced lions for Daniel, silencing the voices that have risen against you. I see the fire of his glory falling, not in a hidden corner, but in the open square where the crowd has gathered. The God of Elijah is not finished with public demonstrations of his power. This is not a weekend for hiding. This is a weekend for standing in the open and declaring, watch what my God will do. The enemy has shouted, but his voice will be drowned out by the thunder of God's intervention. The accuser has pointed, but his finger will fall limp in the face of God's vindication. This is the kind of move that rewrites stories, that shifts legacies, that turns the tide for generations to come. Chosen ones, brace yourself for the sudden Nehum of God. The pace will change, the atmosphere will thicken with his presence. You will find yourself in moments that make you stop and realize this is holy ground. You will see answers to prayers you forgot you prayed. You will witness alignments you could not have arranged in your own strength. You will feel the weight of his hand moving you into position for things you did not even know to expect. And when it happens, it will not be silent. The sound of joy will rise. The shout of victory will echo. The testimony will spread like fire. Men and women who have never sought God will be stirred by what they see him do in your life. The unbelieving will have no argument. The mocking will cease. The world will be confronted with the reality that the living God has moved in undeniable power right before their eyes. This is the weekend where heaven writes a chapter in your life that no one can erase. The pen is in his hand, the ink is his glory, and the page is wide open. Stand ready, chosen ones. The supernatural explosion is not coming, it is here. And once it breaks forth, nothing will ever be the same again.